probably already know that Miss Hepburn is UNICEF's Goodwill Ambassador, and you've been quite literally all over the world. You also know that, much to the chagrin of her fans, Miss Hepburn took leave of the big silver screen for quite a long time while you raised your two sons.
That's right.
What a wonderful, wonderful option.
They got so tall. I did a good job of raising them that they're very tall young men now.
Let me just take 10 seconds to tell them everything I know about you, and you'll fill in the blanks. You're Holland-born.
No.
Netherlands.
I mean, I was born in Belgium, in
Belgium.
fact. My
Brussels.
mother was Dutch, and my father Irish.
And you were a little girl during the war, and you lost very close relatives to the Nazis.
Yes.
And you also had moments when you didn't know whether you would have food in the morning.
Many of them, yes.
You were also a beneficiary of UNICEF at that time.
That's right. Right after the war, UNICEF actually was formed. It was then called UNRWA, and it was formed to come to the aid of children in the aftermath of war, when Europe lay in ruins and children were scattered in the streets and were starving.
Uh-huh. Your parents were divorced when you were a very young girl?
6, yes.
And your mother gave you dancing lessons. Did you ask for them?
She didn't. Yeah, she let me have them because I was dying to be a dancer.
Did they say you were too tall?
I became too tall. Yes,
5'7" was too
I just grew and grew, yes, and I did become awfully tall for a dancer then. Today, modern dance and, you know, tastes have changed, but in those days, most dancers were tiny. Mm-hmm. And I, at the age of 14, was as tall as I am today, and on point shoes, you know, I towered over the young men that were supposed to dance with me.
Mm. You told Barbara Walters that you never considered yourself particularly smashing.
I did tell her that, and it's quite right, yes.
Uh-huh. We can... Who is smashing, or who was smashing? Do you recall having, looking at women that you wished you had looked like, or...?
Oh, there's so many. How much time do we have?
Well, I won't press you on it. It's not a fair question. I mean, it obliges you to pick someone over another.
Way back, Ava Gardner and Ingrid Bergman and Elizabeth Taylor. And there's so many beautiful girls now, I couldn't name them all.
So no one was more surprised then?
Michelle Pfeiffer. I think she's gorgeous.
Well, won't she be pleased at being included in that Hall of Fame list? No one could have been more surprised then that you became a star. You must have shocked yourself.
I still am. I'm still in shock.
And you came to America to star on Broadway in Gigi.
And be on your show. It took me a while.
Well, it did. Well, it took us a while to encourage you to do our program, but I assure you, your comment will be in my highlight reel, and I will bore future generations with it. Your first movie, you won an Academy Award.
Yes. How about that?
How did you... And you never became an egomaniac, as far as I can tell.
How do you know?
Well, all the copy, I've never seen bad copy about you.
Well, the press has been very good to me, that's true. But then, you know, it was easy. Because I did a test with some 500 other girls. That was the hardest part. But once I was chosen by William Wyler and Gregory Peck, who had approval of his, hard to call it a co-star, but of his partner at the time, allowed me to do this picture. And you can't miss if you're directed by William Wyler and you work with Gregory Peck. Mm-hmm. You know, I was given every chance.
May I ask?
And I didn't blow it. That's what was good about it.
You didn't. How old were you for Roman Holiday? In Roman.
Now you're getting indiscreet.
Well,
already.
I also heard you say that you're not self-conscious about your age, so I'm wading into this.
I'm not a bit self-conscious about it. Everybody knows it, even if I was. I was 24 when I did the picture. But a very young 24, because in those days, you know, I was really like a 16-year-old. I mean, I'd had a different life than most kids today and been brought up very strictly.
Mm-hmm.
And hadn't been in, around the world much. And
You are 60.
16, yes, not 16, no.
60.
60.
And you've had no cosmetic surgery.
Naturally. Not. They said he was so great and so friendly. He's asked me about my age, cosmetic surgery. And I don't have a watch, but we haven't done 2 minutes yet.
And you've never had a weight problem.
No, that I really never have. I have a problem of losing.
Mm-hmm.
If I get nervous, I don't eat. I love to eat,
Mm-hmm.
but I need not to be nervous to eat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very nervous, you see. I'm nervous now.
Yes.
Now, if I'm nervous with you, imagine what I'm like when I have to,
You told an interviewer that you like it before you perform and you like it after you
Yes.
perform, but not while you're performing.
Why, if I'm doing a picture, yes, I do enjoy doing the scenes, but the agony I go through before doing something is it's really rather silly. I mean, I had the great honor the other night of receiving a Golden Globe. And I was terribly concerned that the mic would pick up the thumping of my heart while I was speaking. And I'm not nervous now, you see. Now I'm very happy sitting there with you. But I've had a terrible time all day.
All day, anticipating.
I think this will be my epitaph, that it's nerves what done her in, as they said.
Well,
as Liza Doolittle would say.
Let me just explore that just a moment. How does your childhood and the whole being invaded by the Nazis, something most of us have only seen in the movies, you experienced as a child. And then shortly after, you lost loved ones, and then shortly after that, your parents split. You remember, I think you remember...
No, they split before the war, because I was 10 when the war broke out. In fact, I was in England when the war broke out. I was alone in England. My mother brought me back to Holland where they were living. And this was in September, and in May, the Germans marched into Holland. They had first marched into Poland, and Holland was next. And you say, what was it like?
Well, it must have left you very insecure. I don't know if it did. I would guess that it would.
That is not what left me insecure. My father leaving us left me insecure. For life, perhaps. I do think there are things that experiences in childhood form you for the rest of your life. That's also why I'm so concerned with children today, not just that they're starving and so forth, but children that are surrounded by violence and horror, what this is going to do to them. And UNICEF can do very little about that. But to come back to childhood, there's so many images that will never go away. Such as we were on the radio, we were told to stay indoors, the country had been invaded, to not even appear at the windows, to close the curtains and so forth. Telling me that, of course, I was behind the curtains and I saw these German tanks come in for hours, marching, driving. And the Holland fell after 5 days because it's a small country with a small army, and they fought very bravely, but there was no way of holding back the German army, and all of that is history now. Then followed 5 years, and of course you say, oh my God, isn't that terrible, 5 years of German occupation, which it was. But a child is a child is a child. You live by the day. Obviously it was much worse for my mother in a certain sense than for my family. And just went to school, except that I was shoved into a Dutch school right away, not knowing a word of Dutch, because my mother was worried about this child speaking English in the streets and Germans all around, and she thought that was rather dangerous. So that was a traumatic experience, to end up in a huge classroom not knowing what word that was being said, and every time I opened my mouth, everybody roaring with laughter. That's just great at that age. Mm-hmm. But it's a great way to learn a language, I can speak Dutch.